Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to be sharing what my English language arts has looked like from pre-K to 6th grade. So this was a video requested by someone, and again, if you ever have video requests, don't hesitate to put them in the comments section. You know, the point of my channel is to be helpful to other people, hopefully. So if there's ever something you want me to talk about more in depth or discuss, don't hesitate to leave a comment. But the comment was asking if I can kind of show the progression of English Language Arts, ELA, throughout the years. This is our 4th year of homeschooling. And I understand, it is hard to kind of see where you're going. So I wanted to lay out what I have done from pre-K to 6th grade, and with each of my children, how it's looked differently. And I think that would be the first thing I would mention, that each child is unique and you will have to make adjustments to that child. And that does not necessarily mean completely different curriculum. Sometimes it means just adjusting what you've used in the past to meet that child's needs. I did put up a video recently about how I adjusted some curriculum to meet my individual kids' needs. So that's completely possible. And you'll definitely see curriculum I'm going to talk about that has gone through multiple kids and will continue to go through multiple kids. So I have 3 children. I have a 11-year-old in 6th grade. I have a 7, almost 8-year-old doing 2nd, 3rd grade level. She's always been the type that borders between 2 grade levels. She's in, this and some others. And then I have a 4.5-year-old doing pre-K. So for my oldest, I'm kind of going to paint a picture for you of each child so you can kind of see how the curriculum progression works for that child. And at the end, I am going to share some of the things I wish I had done earlier or done differently looking back. So for my 11-year-old, she did preschool at home. So she was the child begging me at 3.5 to teach her to read, and she took to reading very naturally. She did do a private preschool at 4, but that was only a couple days a week, and that was more for socialization and games and activities, not so much, the academic learning of preschool. All of that was more at home, so I taught her how to read. I did all those things with her, but starting in kindergarten, she did go to public school. She did kindergarten K through 2nd grade, and then she came home for 3rd grade. And you can see that on my channel if you look back in my videos. Some of my earlier videos are deciding to homeschool her, bring her home. So if you ever want to see kind of step-by-step how I did it, all those videos are available. But I can understand not wanting to, siphon through all those different videos. So I'm going to give you a quick ELA here. But that's her. She's always taken to language arts pretty easily, and it's come very naturally to her. So for my 7-year-old, she's been homeschooled since the beginning, and language arts has been more of a struggle for her, particularly reading. She was diagnosed with ADHD, so that did play a little into it. The focus issue, the ability to focus, stamina with reading, things like that. Again, I have videos specifying, the details of those things if you want to check that out. That's just a quick synopsis of her. She's more of a struggle in this particular subject area. And there's my youngest, my 4.5-year-old, who is just at the very beginning of the English language arts steps. But that kind of gives you a quick overview of each child. Because obviously when I'm talking about pre-K, I have 3 kids I can tell you about, right? But when I'm talking about 5th grade, 6th grade, I can only refer you to what I've done with my oldest and maybe what I would do differently with my other kids. So let's start with pre-K. So this is, I think, anywhere between 3.5, 4.5. So again, my oldest, 3.5, really wanted to learn how to read. So we started at that. I am a big proponent of starting when your kids are ready, and if they're not showing readiness by 4.5, that's usually when I would start. All of my kids have shown readiness and eagerness to learn way before that. So 3.5, 4 has always been the age range my kids have shown interest in wanting to learn. And especially with my son, I think he was the earliest because he sees what his sisters do, so he wants to do that too. So for preschool, and you will see me looking down because I had to make a long list of what we've done over the years. And luckily, I've always tracked that. I use OneNote to keep track of our yearly, what we do every year and schedules and things like that, which is great to look back at for making you these videos. But also when my son is coming up or my 7-year-old is coming up, I can look back at what I did previously. Again, check out that video if you want to see how I use OneNote to organize that. But I still continue to use OneNote to this day to keep track of those things. So preschool, I've always started with, so around 3.5, 4, the first thing I start with is a letter of the week curriculum. Now I've used the same one on all 3 of my kids, and that's Confessions of a Homeschooler, Letter of the Week curriculum. Would I use that again if I hadn't already purchased it? No. I think it's great. It does have a lot of repetitive activities, different activities. It is religious based, so there are, aspects of memory verse, and there is, J's for Jesus. We chose to do J's for jelly bean because it did give you the option of going either way with that. But it is a lot to print out, it is a lot to prep, and I think there are a lot of options out there for Letter of the Week curriculum that don't require that much effort on your part. And the only reason I did it with my 7-year-old and my 4.5-year-old coming up is because I already had everything prepped and ready and gone through, had all the materials, so it was good to go. But I do like that introduction, spending a week working on a letter, doing activities, but also bringing in things like patterning and math, early math skills, things like that. A lot of play-based learning at that age. So I do like starting with that. Again, it'll take like 6-7 months for the child to finish. So some of the other things I bring in, and you'll see that my son uses these as well. I love leapfrog videos. Usually when I'm working with my older 2, my son has finished his school, he gets to pick a leapfrog video. And you can find a lot of these on the streaming services for free, so you don't have to buy the DVDs. But again, when my 11-year-old, my now 11-year-old was doing preschool at home, we had the DVDs. So we have a bunch of the leapfrog DVDs. Letter Factory in particular, I think, is really great for teaching letter sounds, and it gives a really good visual reminder for the kids of what letter sounds make. So another thing I always bring in for preschool is Handwriting Without Tears. Now my son is on the 2nd book of this. There is a one before this, but I think this is a great introduction. We've tried different writing programs in the past, and so for example, the Dubay writing, we tried that in the past. Again, we always come back to this. I do like how it's structured. I think it works really good. All my kids have done it, and we use it, from the preschool levels all the way up to 5th grade. Something I brought in with my oldest and now my youngest, I didn't do with my middle child, was Explode the Code. So I have all the books for that. And again, I do think this is really good phonics practice and handwriting practice as well. So I bring that into the preschool years. And those are kind of the basic things I have done. Now, things I have added over the years. So that would be like, obviously my oldest had more than that because she was my first, and she was an only child for a while, so I could do a lot more. But now that I've had, this is my 3rd time going through it, I do make some adjustments fitting the child. So my 4.5-year-old son, he's my first child to have issues with understanding that letters are symbols that represent sounds. So I did bring in some supplementary material to help with that. One of them was reading flex, and I do have a video about, those things as well, just to help kind of him understand that better. And another thing I brought in was Fun Time Phonics, and this was to help, letter with phonetic practice, because he was having trouble isolating sounds and understanding that letter or words have sounds to them. And again, we only got that far before I started getting a little above his head, but this is something that goes through 2nd grade, so I can pull out more resources as I need them. But that's an example of how I have changed based on this particular child's needs. I brought in something that he was struggling with, and I didn't completely change the curriculum I use or go to something else. I just brought in a supplement material that would help him with that specific skill area he was struggling. And something else I've done different for him is he's doing core knowledge preschool. Now I've done core knowledge language arts with my 7-year-old for quite a few years, but she never did the preschool level. She started with kindergarten level. And I really enjoyed it. It is a bit harder to navigate, I think, than the other core knowledge units. And again, I have a video about preschool, all the core knowledge units that we use, if you want to check those out. But I really like it. So we're in classic tales right now. So we just did Thumbelina, and this is example of the activity page. Again, completely free online, really good quality resources. It does have, teaching your kid how to read as well, if that's something you're looking for. But he got little cutouts, pictures, and he got to retell the story. And it does have some visual, comprehension, retrieval practice tools within it as well. So I really do like core knowledge. And I think it's worked really well for my 7-year-old and my 4.5-year-old. So that is something that I have changed and brought in specifically for him, because I do think exposure to lots of different information and categories at this age is really helpful, especially when they're building upon their knowledge. They have more to grasp from. So that's preschool. Next would be kindergarten. So in kindergarten, I always start all about reading level 1. Now I've done this with all 3 of my kids. I think this is a curriculum that works with many different types of children. It worked for my oldest, who was really does really well with English language arts and learning to read, and it worked really well with my 7.5-year-old who struggles, and my 4.5-year-old has just started and it's going well for him too. So I do think this is one of those across the board curriculums that works. Sometimes it just means adjusting your specific teaching strategy, not necessarily adjusting the curriculum. So that is what we do for first grade. And then I always bring in Handwriting Without Tears, the next level, the first grade level. I don't have, some of these things because they were really from a long time ago. And then usually I will do core knowledge, kindergarten, or first grade. Now with my 7.5-year-old, again, my 11-year-old never did this because she went into public school. So my 7.5-year-old she did core knowledge, first grade, and kindergarten, because looking at the information, there are 2 sections in the language arts components for kindergarten through, I believe, 4th grade or 3rd grade. There's listening and learning, which is vocabulary, reading comprehension, contextual knowledge. And then there is the skills section, which is more handwriting, learning to read, phonetic practice, things like that. I don't use the skills section of core knowledge because I use all about reading. So I like that I can just pull the listening and learning strands, the units from that, and it's all organized completely separate, so you don't have to pull things out. But I like that I can use it because there's a lot of contextual knowledge. It covers science, it covers history, as well as literature. So I really do like that it's combined in all those ways. And I have to say my son in particular has loved the stories and often repeats a lot of them. For kindergarten, my 7.5-year-old did the core knowledge first grade. So you can level it up or down depending on your child. Again, that's one of those adjustments you can make. I felt, looking at the listening and learning strand, she was above that for kindergarten. So she started core knowledge first grade in her kindergarten year. And that is what I do for first grade. I feel like learning to read in particular is a lot on a kid, so I don't want to pile a lot of resources. If I see struggles or in certain areas, I will supplement or adjust as needed, but I don't want to pile a lot on in kindergarten. Because again, they're doing math and other things as well. So for first grade, again, this is aimed at my 7.5-year-old because my oldest would be in public school for first grade. So first grade, I bring in all about reading, level 2. And again, my 7.5-year-old has completed that level. Core knowledge, I just do the next level set. So for my 7.5-year-old, she did 2nd grade, and that went really well. And then Handwriting Without Tears, just a continuation of the next book. I also used core knowledge handwriting in this grade level, and I just brought it back a year. So she was doing core knowledge first grade skills, which was a lot of handwriting practice. But we do also do Handwriting Without Tears, but those books never last throughout the year, so I would supplement with core knowledge handwriting. And then for first grade, I do start bringing in readers because they are reading more on their own now. I made a whole video about first grade readers. These are really cheap off thrift books, $5, $6. They have multiple stories in there, multiple levels, and they progress and get harder. So I got a whole set of those, and those brought us into 2nd grade too. I do like specific reading. I like that it's nonfiction and fiction together, so I don't have to go and search out a ton of readers for her. Those are available at her level, multiple types of material you're covering. So that's first grade. Again, not too overwhelming. Next would be second grade, and just like you saw, it's a continuation of All About Reading, and this is exactly where my 7.5-year-old is right now. She's in the second, third grade range. So she's doing All About Reading level 3, and she's halfway done with that, and that's going well, again. Next, she's doing core knowledge. She's doing the third grade listening and learning series. And again, that's going really well for her. She's tested really well in language arts. We did math testing this past school year. She tested really well with vocabulary and all those things. So core knowledge is doing exactly what I need it to be doing. We do handwriting without tears, just a continuation of the previous books. So she's working on printing power. And then for this particular child, I did supplement because she has letter reversal. So she did this Orton Gillingham dyslexia book for, I believe it was B, D, and P specifically. So she did that workbook to help with that. Again, adjusting or supplementing in areas you see where your child needs. Another thing I brought in for her was grammar. I wanted to introduce. Now, the Journeys and Harcourt books do introduce that little, and there's a little bit in core knowledge, listening, and learning. There's probably more in the skills section, but I wanted more for her. So we started first language lessons. And again, in that video, I talked about how I adjust this curriculum to meet her needs, but this brings in really good grammar concepts for her, but it also helps with repetition. She's a brain that needs a lot of practice with something to recall it. So again, that was an adjustment for her. So the only other thing would be independent reading. So this is by her choice. I don't force her to independently read. She has found that if she reads, every day, that reading becomes a lot easier to her. It's better for her brain. So I just picked up something she grabbed from the library, this Bandcamp, and it's a graphic novel. Graphic novels have gone really well for her just because I think the visual appeal with her ADHD does help. But she will pick out readers from the library as well as she has her readers from All About Reading, and then we have an entire shelf of readers that she can pull from. But I think second grade is a good time to have them do that independent reading. So that takes me into third grade. So this is where my oldest would have started her homeschool journey. And with her, we started with Lightning Literature Grade 3. And I don't have the book to show you because I've lent it out for others to use at this point because I don't need it. She started with Lightning Literature Grade 3, worked really well for her. Again, she is a very good reader. She was reading chapter books, and during kindergarten, she was reading Junie B. Jones books. So it's been good for her to have that independence of it. I do like that the readers are varied. She's exposed to different types of literature, not necessarily literature she would have picked up by herself. One of the things we brought in was vocabulary, and for her third grade, I had her do Wordly Wise. And that worked fine. We did eventually move back to Sadler vocab because luckily someone commented, hey, I thought you would like this, look into it. And I did. It did work better. Sadler vocab does work better for her from Wordly Wise, but she did do Wordly Wise in third grade. She, of course, continued handwriting without tears. In third grade, she did cursive. In third grade, we brought in Michael Clay Thompson, the first level, and we worked through the first level through third and fourth grade because you can see that the sentence analysis and Sentence Island books are really big. So she would practice that through third and fourth grade. Of course, it did have vocabulary components as well. And one of the reasons I brought in Michael Clay Thompson is because I think Lightning Literature does a good job tying in the grammar components to what you're reading, but there's not enough practice. And she needed a little bit more of a challenge. And Michael Clay Thompson was that challenge for her. So that's why I ended up bringing it in. And of course, we did start All About Spelling 1 and 2 in third grade, and she flew through them. So I did not continue on because they were too easy for her. And that's something I'm going to talk about. If I could go back and change something, what I would do. In third grade, we did bring in Torchlight, and this was a group subject. and this was Logic and Legends, and this is a whole lot of literature and exposures to different type of literature. Great. It does have poetry and writing in there. We did those components, especially the first time we used Torchlight, but it wasn't enough to, I would say, it'd be a full curriculum for English language arts. You definitely need other components, but there was snippets of that in there as well. So that was 3rd grade. And one of the questions I do get is why I don't have my 7.5-year-old doing Lightning Literature. They're very different kids. Like I said, my oldest, English language arts comes, more naturally to her. She's a very strong reader. She can read anything you put in front of her. She's got a lot of self-motivation. She doesn't need a lot of guidance in that area. While my 7.5-year-old struggles with reading and focus and needs me sitting there. So they're different kids. They require different things. Lightning Literature is not one of those, I think, that can stretch across that many types of kids. There did have to be a split between them. And I think that's important to say, that I can adjust a lot. But at some point there are different needs that a curriculum would need for my oldest compared to my youngest, because they're completely separate ends of it. So for 4th grade, again, this is what I did for my oldest. We continued on with Michael Clay Thompson. We finished off the books for it, and these are written by Michael Clay Thompson. These were really good. Highly recommend them. 4th grade, we introduced word ladders. Again, she did those. And she did them in 5th grade, I believe, as well. For her bulk language arts, she did Lightning Literature. Again, went really well. You can see we've stuck with Lightning Literature because it's met her needs, and I've just supplemented where its weaker areas. One of the weaker areas is the writing component of Lightning Literature. I don't think it gives enough structure. So in her 3rd grade, going into 4th grade summer, we brought in structure and style. She started it in the summer, brought it into fall, and I started in the summer because I thought it would be better for her to have less to do when tackling this, because coming from the public school, she had very little at all writing instruction, especially during the pandemic years. Everything was kind of crazy with the public school. So she had very little grammar instruction, very little writing instruction, but she's a child that works really well from lists, from scaffolding, from structure. So having an outline of how to do something worked very well for her. So she started that in 4th grade. She continued with Sadler vocab, just the next level up. I did introduce typing at this point, which I don't think falls in English language arts, but I do think it's important because they do start typing their papers eventually. So she started learning typing. We did bring in Torchlight Level 3 as a group subject. Again, this had a lot of good literature that she was exposed to, and it did have poetry and writing in it, but we did less of that. I don't think we did those components at all when we did Level 3, just because we had other areas we were hitting. So that was the bulk of what she did for 4th grade. So 5th grade, which would be last year, she continued on with Lightning Literature grade 5. And again, I do like that because she's used this for so many years, it's really building upon itself. She's covering concepts she's covered before, but going deeper every time. And I do like, again, that literature directly relates to what she's learning. And when she does structure and style, that only takes us through about half the year. The rest of the year, she does do the writing assignments in Lightning Literature, but uses the skills she's learned in IEW structure and style to do those papers. It gives her that structure and the ability to do them a lot better than because there's very little instruction, even in the teacher manual, about how to write the papers. And I will have to say that Lightning Literature will sometimes take 2 weeks to write a paper, and after doing, IEW, she can write out a 5-paragraph paper in a matter of days. So when she switches to Lightning Literature writing, it's a break for her. It's very easy for her. But that's important, that if your child, it comes very naturally or is easier for them, that you should make sure you're challenging them in those areas so they don't get complacent. They don't get to the feeling that this is easy and this will always be easy, because then you have the issue of when they hit something hard for the first time, they think they can't do it or they think they're dumb. and their mindset completely changes. So finding areas to challenge her has been difficult, but that's why we brought in Michael K. Thompson and other supplement materials such as IEW for writing. She of course continued with Handwriting Without Tears. It was the last book, and it was just, the smaller print, getting used to that. And then she, like I said, continued with IEW, and we just followed the structure of, this is what you do in 4th grade, this is what you do in 5th grade. I would say there was a lot of repetition between the 2 levels, and that's why I ended up making a change in 6th grade, that she spends half the year doing IEW, spends the other half of the year practicing IEW. It was very repetitive, but it was good practice. So that brings us to 6th grade, and you can guess she did. She's currently working on Lightning and Literature, 6th grade, going really well. Again, we have continued with Michael Clay Thompson, and that was not originally my plan, but because we're able to I was able to find it on eBay for a price that was within my budget. So she's on level 2 of that. We're working through that. Again, a lot of similar concepts are touched on, but going deeper, and it does really help you get a firm grasp of grammar. She, instead of going to what's recommended for 6th grade IEW, I skipped her ahead to the 7th grade, and that's just because she's had so much practice with it. Naturally, she's very good in this area. So this has worked out really well. She's had no struggles. We are just now entering week 13. She's had no issue bumping up. And again, that's adjusting to meet your child's needs. If they're, naturally better in this area, it's okay to bump them up if they have the skills necessary to do it. So we have been working with Sadler Vocab. Again, that's going well. I brought in Phonetic Zoo this year, and again in that video I talked about how I've adjusted that to meet her needs, but that is going well so far. And then for 6th grade, I did notice that she had some gaps I had to fill, and some of that was through the math testing we'd done and then just observing her as well. So I brought in this workbook from Amazon, and this is capitalization and punctuation. That is something she just needs to practice. I don't have to say it has made a difference. I've noticed that her, Michael Clay Thompson is great with grammar, and Lightning Literature does teach grammar and mechanics and things like that, but not to the point where I think it sticks. It's not repetitive enough, and there's not enough review in it for them to really cement those skills. So that is something that I have supplemented with. Same with Editor-in-Chief, being able to go back and look at your paper and say, hey, I need to, make sure this is a capital, lowercase, this has to have a comma, things like that, quotation marks. So the mechanics, I did bring those into supplement. So that is 6th grade. And real quick, the things I would change going back if I had the opportunity. I would start core knowledge earlier. Like I said, with my 4.5-year-old, I started with preschool. My 7.5-year-old, she's gone since the beginning with core knowledge. I think it's gone absolutely wonderful. I think it's an awesome option, completely free, well done. I would have started core knowledge earlier with my kids. Another thing was spelling. I told you she did all about spelling in 3rd grade, I believe it was. Flew through the first few levels. She is naturally a good speller, but realizing that that's from memory and just reading a lot, and that she didn't really have a good firm grasp on the rules. Brought in Phonetic Zoo. Again, had to adjust it to meet her specific needs, but I wish I would have kept going with spelling. I wish I would have continued to level 4, 5, 6 and continued on with her. That's something I would have, if I could go back, I would have done. And with my youngest daughter, I think that's the route we're going to try, is introducing all about spelling earlier. So she'll probably start it towards the end of her 2nd grade year and move through the levels depending on how they go. But I wish I would have started spelling earlier with her, because going back now, it's a lot harder to get those spelling rules in the age she's at. Another thing I would have done earlier is introduced writing. So like I said, when my daughter came home for homeschool at 3rd grade, she had no real prior writing experience. And luckily, structure and style worked really well for her, but there was a learning curve with it, having to figure out how to write a sentence. Luckily, Michael Clay Thompson, again, helped with that. understanding the parts of speech and how the words relate to each other really helps you write a sentence. So again, supplemented that area, but with my 7.5-year-old coming up, I will introduce the concept of writing, not necessarily, with structure and style, but introducing it at a younger age so it's easier to build upon. And the last one is I would have focused more on mechanics. Like I said, there was a gap with my oldest child, and that could be, because K through 2nd grade, that wasn't really talked about or pushed or really learned in public school. So there was already that missing component. And then when we started Lightning Literature, I think there was this assumption that they already have a foundation of it, so it wasn't really pushed a lot. So I now have to supplement and fill that gap now, but I wish I would have paid attention more to punctuation, capitalization, just simple editing and the mechanics of that part of writing. So that is my English language arts journey from pre-K to 6th grade, and some of the things I've adjusted over to fit the particular needs of my child, some of the curriculum that's worked for all 3 of my children. So if you have any questions about anything I particularly talked about, leave in the comments. I'm hoping that this is kind of helpful to see how the journey progresses, and that there are some things that you can absolutely keep and adjust, and some things that you just kind of got to go the other way. But really figuring out the why behind something isn't working, I think, is really important and helpful, and it'll help you determine how to adjust it, or ultimately, if you do need to end up making a switch. I do not think the knee-jerk should be to switch, though, because I do think that's where a lot of gaps are formed. Because like I said, my daughter coming home in 3rd grade, there are things already assumed that she had learned prior to 3rd grade. So I do see a lot of benefit to sticking to curriculum that works and adjusting as needed. So thank you for watching.